Hey guys, this is a special bonus episode of the Morning Scoop. We have a good problem this week, which is that even with a daily podcast, there is so much interesting stuff to talk about that we've got to do a little more than just one a day. So we'll do this one. May have another one as we get a little closer to the game as well. But I wanted to share some other thoughts from former Ohio State quarterback and current ESPN personality Kirk Herbstreit. Herbstreit will be on the call for the Rose Bowl game on Saturday, along with Chris Fowler, Holly Rowe, Tiffany Blackman. And he always talks about this game as one that is just an absolute favorite of his because as someone who was growing up in the Midwest in the 1970s, 1980s, this is something that it was like the thing for the end of the football season, for New Year's Day. I'm sure that's something that a lot of people listening to the show can probably relate to. This week, he sat down to answer some questions from other media members about that Rose Bowl game, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, and more. So we're going to give you a little bit of his thoughts on those subjects here. The first thing that you're going to hear was the question about whether the college football playoff had rendered the Rose Bowl meaningless in years when it's not part of the Final Four. I'll give you older Buckeye fans a little bit of a trigger warning here. He's going to talk about the 1990 Liberty Bowl here at one point, so listener discretion is advised.
Well, Woody Hayes coached a lot of years. Earl Bruce was at Ohio State, John Cooper, Urban Meyer. And I think even before we had a BCS and we had a playoff, the goal was always to go to the Rose Bowl. For Bo Schembechler, it was to go to the Rose Bowl, right? How often did they actually go to the Rose Bowl? Not very often. And yet they still went to another bowl game and they still were excited to go play in whatever bowl game that they went to. I just don't buy into this narrative of meaningless bowl games. These teams have always had goals. The high-profile teams have always had goals to get to the championship or to get to a certain bowl. And it doesn't happen all that often. But you don't throw in the towel and say, well, we didn't accomplish our goals, so we're not real happy about going to this bowl, but we're gonna go. I was on a team that did that. We lost to Michigan in 1990. And back in those days, you fell way down. And we went to the Liberty Bowl. And we had players on our team that were basically bad-mouthing the city of Memphis and the Liberty Bowl publicly to the media. And we went down to Memphis and they hated us. And I don't blame them, for the things that were said. After that Michigan loss. To me, I get being upset. I get like, hey, we didn't accomplish our goal. We didn't beat our rival. We didn't go to the Big Ten championship. We didn't go to the playoff. But hey, man, we're going to the Rose Bowl. Like it's the Rose Bowl. We used to have to try to deal with the consolation prize of the Citrus Bowl. But this is the Rose Bowl. And, maybe these players that are struggling to understand it, maybe when they get out there, and they get out on that field, maybe it'll dawn on them like why this bowl is different or why it's unique. And I hope they do. I get being disappointed, but you got to shake it off and move on to the next game, and get the bad taste out of your mouth. It's not like because we have a playoff that teams before a playoff didn't achieve their goals and still went to play at their bowl game and look forward to it. I don't get it. I never will. If you're a competitor, you like to play in a game and let alone 100,000 seat stadium and a ranking or a TV rating that'll be as high as a semifinal. My God, there's the tradition, which I know today's player doesn't really get that. But I think you do once you get there and you get into that stadium. I think you start to feel it a little bit more. But I hope this isn't our new norm. I hope it's just an era that we'll somehow get out of. But I think the quote of meaningless bowl games, is the Akron game a meaningless game in September? Are we just going to pick and choose where a game has meaning? Your team is playing an effing game. Like it matters. You go play and you go compete your ass off. That's what you do. That's your job. I don't get meaningless. I never will.
The Buckeyes' opponent this weekend, of course, is Utah. we've talked a little bit on this show with Josh Furlong last week about the two tragedies that have befallen the Utes over the last year or so, the deaths of Ty Jordan and Aaron Lowe, two active players in the program who were both killed in the last year. And that's the kind of burden that could just completely derail a program. Instead, the Utes have actually used it, come together, and become stronger, and use it to fuel what has been an incredible season for them. Here's what Herbstreit had to say about how they've handled those emotions from those deaths and used it to fuel this incredible run this fall.
Yeah, I have been just in awe of their season. Losing one player and then losing another player who was honoring him wearing the jersey, and the families involved there, and the team going back to the funerals, and then starting the year 1-2, and then making a switch at quarterback to Cam, and then to fight through all that and really stay incredibly unified through all that. They've been one of the great stories of the year in college football, and having a chance to be around them. The Pac-12 championship, you do Zooms like we're doing right now. And one of the players they put on was Devin Lloyd. And I've followed his career and always been impressed with him. But, when you sit down for 30 minutes with him, you just start talking and hearing his story. And I was just blown away. I mean, here's a guy that was kind of long and lanky out of high school, one offer basically. I think it was UNLV. I think Boise, he mentioned, came in late on him. And he ends up going to Utah as just a projection of who he could maybe become. And he obviously becomes an All-American and eventually a first-round pick. His dad was in the military. He's a very serious dude. I love that he helps the young freshmen linebackers, during the week. Imagine this. Here's a guy that takes the young guys on defense into the film room and teaches them how to study film. He's like a coach. In fact, I do a show called The Herbies at the end of the year, and I give an award called the Ultimate Herbie, a player that kind of represents everything that's right about the game, being a great player, but also being a great teammate and just doing everything that I love to see a player do. And he was a finalist and actually won that award as my Ultimate Herbie, because I just think he's the total package. He's everything you want to see. I can just already picture him playing for like the Steelers or the Patriots, and like one of those guys that people are like, where'd that guy come from? Oh yeah. He's playing for 9-10 years as a starting linebacker for Bill Belichick. He's that kind of guy. Tremendous leader, incredibly motivated, came back this year to win the Pac-12 and get to the Rose Bowl. Like, if you can't pull for Devin Lloyd, you don't care. He's been great, very incredibly kind of representative of who this Utah team is this year. And I'm excited to get to Pasadena and have a chance to see them and the Buckeyes go toe to toe.
Finally, there was a question about the Michigan game. The Buckeyes obviously just lost to the Wolverines for the first time in a decade, and every time something like that happens, people all want to rush out and proclaim it as this huge sea change that could swing the pendulum back totally the other way. So is it possible that Michigan could now be right on the verge of taking the rivalry over again? Are they going to swing things back to the way they were in the 1990s? Here was Herbstreit's answer on that.
To beat Ohio State every year, I mean, that's a year-to-year thing. But I think their program, if you go back to look at 16, they were right there. It came down to that stop, depending on who you were a fan of. He was either short or he got it. But I mean, they were that close to winning that game. So I think the perception, because there just haven't been wins against Ohio State, the perception, even from some of their own fans. I mean, I travel around the country, and before they had this year, there are Michigan fans that were frustrated. I go back to August. I remember talking with some of you on a call, Angelique most notably, that was like, why is this year going to be any different? And what's going to allow Michigan to kind of take that next step? Well, I think the changes he made to his staff had a lot to do with it. And I think the energy from this team, if you've watched them, that's the thing that I've been so impressed with. And that's not something you can necessarily coach, like Aiden Hutchison and that dude's focus and drive and leadership, and not just him, but the energy that they played with and the belief that they played with when many people were doubting them in September. I think that drove them all year. And that when they beat Penn State in the fashion in which they had to do it, I think it put them in a spot where they were like, you know what, this is happening. We're going to get Ohio State at home, and we're going to climb the mountain. So this was a special year in 2021. How that impacts 22 and 23 and beyond, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But there's a pretty good nucleus of players on this football team that's coming back, and I like how he builds his team. I like how he develops his players. So I don't know if they're going to beat Ohio State every year, but I see no reason for this program to not be, a consistent competitive program every single year in the Big Ten.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that show. Just a little different, but it was kind of, I thought there were some interesting answers in there, some things that Ohio State fans might enjoy hearing, might think were interesting to hear. Just some other stuff to think about this week, as there's plenty to think about heading into that Rose Bowl game. But I thought you guys might enjoy that. Just give that to you as a little bonus, a little thank you for subscribing to The Morning Scoop. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow with a normal episode of The Morning Scoop as well. Also have plenty of Buckeye Weekly episodes this week with Tony Gerderman and I. Kevin Noon's going to have some big noon kickoff shows from out here at the Rose Bowl. Lots and lots of great content. So make sure all those great podcasts, you can find them all. Wherever you're listening to this, you can find those. Just search Buckeye Scoop on whatever podcast platform you like. You can find those shows. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. That does help other folks find these shows. And also hit that bell, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you get notified every time we post a new show like this. Because sometimes we do post extra shows, and we're a little off our normal schedule sometimes because we're doing a little bit of extra work. But there's plenty to talk about, as I said, and lots of stuff that people are interested in hearing about this week. So hit that bell, and you'll never miss a thing. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow morning.